Yep, Rob, can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good.
We're just about to go live, Nancy.
Okay. Have we got a quorum?
We do, yes.
Can't see the room, so I just thought I'd double check. There we go. Are we good to go?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona Plan Commission, Monday, October 25th, 2021. Call the roll.
Chair Moore,
Here.
Alder Goforth,
Here.
Ms. Fallett,
Here.
Ms. Fox,
Here.
Mr. Holmberg, here. Mr. Holmquist, here. Mr. DePula, here. Mr. Stein.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from October 11th?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those, any changes, corrections, additions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes carry, motion carries. We're at the appearance section. Is there anyone here to appear about something that is not in the public hearing this evening?
Nobody in the room.
And did you get any correspondence or anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll close the appearance section. There is no unfinished business. We'll move right to new business. Number A, a public hearing on the request by Auburn Ridge for approval of a zoning permit for new use following a period of discontinuation. It's 508-510 River Place, case number 2-024-2021. Who would like to present this morning, or this afternoon, sorry, about this proposal? Auburn Ridge and whoever it is, if you could step up to the podium, or let us know who's going to be speaking and introduce yourself.
Hello, excuse me, I'm Dan Brinkman from DSI Real Estate Group. Been working in Monona for about 25 years now developing, and haven't been back to see you guys in a while, but I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about our new tenant at River Place.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, what would you like to tell us this evening?
Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with River Place. Well, we've got 3 buildings that face out to the belt line. It's more of sort of a drive-up quasi-retail buildings. And we were lucky enough to have one of our sister companies, Auburn Ridge. They craft cabinetry for homes, predominantly for Viridian homes, but also about a quarter of their business is for third parties. And they have previously had a showroom on Rimrock Road. But in light of our relationship, plus the fact that they needed some more space, they are planning on moving to River Place and bringing their cabinet showroom there, which would be one of the buildings facing the Beltline. So they'll have displays there for all their different, vignettes and cabinetry. And most of their business is done by appointment only in that showroom. They do all their production out in the Marshall area. So it's not a big parking requirement or anything like that, but it's a nice high-profile place for them to be seen from all the traffic going by. And like I said, it is a sister company of ours, so we're happy to have them there.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we close the public hearing, or is there anybody else here to speak on behalf of this particular establishment?
I think it's just me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay, terrific. Well, we'll close the public hearing, and we'll move on to 6B, consideration of action on the request by Auburn Ridge for approval of a zoning permit for new use following a period of discontinuation at 508-510 River Place, case number 2-024-2021. Doug?
Thank you. So just to reiterate this request, it's a request for a zoning permit following a period of vacancy. This particular space has been vacant since November 2018 when Next Level Healthcare vacated the space. Zoning, it's Community Design District CDD. Planning Commission reviews applications for zoning permits. As mentioned, Auburn Ridge plan to use the space as a retail showroom. There'll be no manufacturing taking place in the space. Currently, the store on Rimrock Road is by appointment only. The applicant reassured me that even if that were to change, it would still just be traditional business hours that they would keep. The parking, there's a total of 141 stalls plus 6 handicap accessible that are shared between the 500, 600, and 700 block of River Place. The 4,800 square foot store with the parking standards of 1 per 300 square feet would require 16 stalls in total. When I conducted the site visit, it looked like there would be plenty of parking, and it doesn't sound like from the sort of details with the appointment only that they would be really pushing those numbers either. Also of note, there is a comprehensive sign plan for the center. So the signage, I already have that on my desk. That can be approved administratively if the zoning permit were to proceed. With that, staff recommends approval with the conditions as laid out in the staff report. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Chris, would you like to start us off?
I have no issues. I think it's a great use for the property.
Could you say that again? It's a little hard to hear you.
I have no issues with it. I think it'd be a great use for that property.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. It's amazing what happens when that microphone works. Patrick?
Also, no issues. Just glad to see the commercial property being utilized.
Great. Thank you. Christy?
Yep, agree. And I know this business well because I used to be a business neighbor when I owned my design business over on Rimrock. So I know it's very low traffic, really clean operation. I would be excited to see it in that position, in that space.
Thank you. Doreen?
I think it looks great.
Rob?
For the dad, looks good.
Susan?
No issues, looks fine to me.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Brian?
Brian?
Sorry.
No worries, it looks fine to me as well.
Lynn, where are you?
I came down to the library.
Okay. You're not in the screen, so I apologize. I didn't see you there, so I just could attend.
He's a vampire for Halloween. You can't see him on camera.
Okay. Thanks very much. Beyond Brian, then, do I have a motion?
I'll move approval as laid out in the staff report.
I'll second it.
You got a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Congratulations.
Thank
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 60, public hearing on the request by Galway companies for approval of a fence permit at 6408 Ridge Road. Who's here speaking on behalf of Galway?
Chair?
Nancy?
Yes.
This is Chris. I have to abstain. I'm working for the applicant on this project.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Who might be here to speak on behalf of Galway companies?
This is Tyler Koenig with McGann Construction. We're the GC for the property there.
Absolutely, Tyler. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
What would you like to share about this fence?
So we're being asked to build a 4-foot tall black chain link fence around the eastern side of the property next to one of the stairwells. The purpose of that fence is to create kind of a dog area on that side of the property to kind of direct tenants to let their dogs out there to try to limit some of the pet staining that they've kind of been dealing with on there. first property over there on Broadway. So really it's just a 4-foot tall fence with a gate on the property. The only use for the dog area there would be for residents, wouldn't be open to public or anything like that. The dogs would be able to be off leash in that area. But again, it's not for public use, just for residents there.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else here besides Tyler?
I don't think anyone else could make it, no.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So I'm assuming there's no one in the library, municipal room?
That's correct.
We'll close the public hearing and move to 6D, consideration of action on the request by Galway Company for approval of a fence permit at 6408 Bridge Road. Doug?
Thank you. So I'll just kind of introduce this. I recognize it's a little bit maybe more unorthodox than our typical requests. Fences specifically are regulated by Chapter 175, Section 22 of the city's Municipal Code of Ordinances. It does allow that the building inspector and zoning administrator consult with the Plan Commission as necessary when determining whether to issue a fence permit for a fence in a commercial, industrial, multifamily district. It was deemed appropriate to bring it back to the Commission just given the location, the intent, as well as the materials that were being planned and proposed by the applicant. So in terms of typical regulations, the street yard, as this would be determined, given it does face Inland Way, it would be determined the street yard. Typically those materials would be more natural in terms of a wood or a stone, a little more decorative. And it does say in the ordinance that wire, chain link, or cyclone type fencing would be prohibited. Additionally, they would be 42 inches in height maximum, as well as there are concerns and considerations for the vision triangle. It is staff's opinion that the fence, the materials, the height are appropriate for its intended use, for fencing in an off-leash pet area, but it is something worth mentioning, just the location and the proximity to both the sidewalk and to the trash entrance. The location, in consulting with the applicant, was determined because of the exit point coming out of the building, the proximity there to be able to just walk straight out of the building and to the gate for the area. I did also confirm that none of the landscaping would be changing. There are a couple large canopy trees that are going to be inside this space, as well as landscaping along the perimeter. And it's just staff's recommendation that this be kept to a high standard, just given the high traffic that's going to be in that area. I'm sure a lot of residents will have pets. So just maintaining that and keeping it looking good, but certainly recognizing in this area that it is an opportune place for pet owners to go. And certainly preferable than the park or other landscaping on the perimeter of that. So a couple items recommended for discussion, but ultimately staff recommends approval of the fence permit with a finding of fact and condition of approval as laid out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Before I open it up for others to respond to, I just want to ask a question. Are you aware of any other development, any other multifamily development in the city of Monona that has either requested or, for that matter, that we've required, have its own private dog area? That was a question for Doug.
I was looking at a few other faces in the room as well and not seeing any. I don't recall any, and I don't think either Chris or Brian are both shaking their heads as well.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Brian, would you like to start this one off?
Sure. So I'm having a little tough time just seeing where it lays out on the plan based on our setbacks and if there are concerns. I know you've mentioned a few of the pieces, the height, the chain link being spelled out for a street yard. But I'm also just wanting to clarify, are there any issues regarding setback from, on that side?
So the main thing would be the vision triangle, and as it relates to most importantly here, the trash entrance. Setbacks, it's typically 6 inches off of the property line. So it's tough to tell on a scale like this, but I'm sure that could be accommodated easily. The vision triangle, as the ordinance says, is something that can be determined by the city's building inspector. So certainly, I'm sure the folks working on this, we could get that drawn up and have a scale drawing prior to any approvals.
Okay, and it looks like, if I'm reading this correct, on the front side, item B, on a corner lot, no less than 10 feet from the traveled portion of any public, they're saying highway here, but roadway?
Yeah, so we do, we would typically for a, and again, this does read a little bit more for a single or a two family. It's a little more clear cut in that instance. So I would certainly say if it were right on the corner there of Inland and Bridge, I would be much keener to focus on that 10 feet. But I do think if the vision triangle element can be addressed, I'm comfortable with the location sort of following that. As I see this, I think of a single or a two-family neighborhood that the corner lot, it's sort of the view around the corner is kind of the primary focus, and I feel that this is far enough away, far enough along inland that shouldn't be an issue.
I mean, overall, the concept of this area of the property does make the most sense about if you were going to have a pet area for residents to use, this is the most ideal spot. So the concept of having it, I don't necessarily have any concern with. I'm curious of the height of why 4 foot versus the max of 42 that we have in our code. And then I'd like to hear others on their concepts of the chain link. I think it is the most utilized product for this type of application. And at the same time, this is the most predominant kind of entry point, and I'm not sure chain link just by itself with aluminum poles every 8 feet is like in harmony with the whole project. And so I'd just like to hear others' thoughts and opinions on that piece before we consider anything.
Thank you, Brian. Christine?
Yeah, I'm also, I do see it. It almost looks like it's the only spot for a dog area, or a pet area, and it is, really highly visible area. I would love to hear from Tyler, like why 48 inches versus 42. Can we
42 definitely could be done. It was just a round number that our fence contractor priced out. So
okay. Yeah, and then I guess I do struggle a little with the chain link. It's so beautiful down there, and for me the chain link is just it's just I guess I'm struggling a little bit with the chain link. I would like to see wood. I would like to see a more natural material, and I also worry about setting a precedent and this coming back to us at other developments. So I guess those are my initial thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Rob?
A couple of comments. As far as the height goes, I don't have any issues with 4 foot. I have a 4 foot black vinyl cycling fence in my own yard. I wouldn't want it any lower. I don't have a great big dog, but if it's for keeping dogs in mind, I think 4 feet is appropriate. As far as the material goes, we approved chain link black vinyl right across the street, so I'd have a hard time having an issue with this considering we just approved it with the Club. pretty sure that's what we ended up with. It disappears. That could be swayed to another material, but this is a small area. It's a pretty low fence, and I think it would disappear fairly easily. I had a question about snow removal on the sidewalk there. I don't know how that's handled today, but I would imagine that on that sidewalk, that's going to get a lot of pressure and potentially a ton of snow pushed right onto that fence. So I would encourage the applicant to use a heavier gauge pole and fencing material, because the last thing we want is to have a maple-looking fence after first snowfall. So that is a consideration. I think those are my only comments.
Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, I think it's the most logical location as well. I went down and looked at it today, and the chain link fence at the yacht club is not really as noticeable. It's set back considerably further from the street, so I think that is a little different situation. And it's also got some other kind of fencing in front of it, so it's not as visible. Because my concern was also with the type of fencing. We have we put up a metal decorative fence in our own yard for our dog. It's in the backyard. But we use the decorative fence specifically because it does look better in consideration for the neighbors. That's why we did that. I think the 4 foot is probably okay too. When you mentioned snow, the other issue is the snow will build up in there, and if you have too short a fence, the dogs can kind of walk right up and over, which we had happen at our house at one point. But I guess I'd prefer the look of a metal decorative fence because it is so visible right there. But you're right, Rob. The black chain link does tend to disappear more, so maybe it would be okay. I feel a little ambivalent about that because I do think it would look better to have a decorative fence. I guess I also wonder about if that's going to be the concentrated area, if there will be some attention paid to maintaining grass in that area, because it is going to take a little more work if that's where most of the dogs are going. I assume they can still walk around and they can take walks in other parts of Monona, but clearly there'll be a concentration there. So I'm glad to hear the landscaping is remaining, but it might take some extra care.
Okay. Great. Tyler, would you like to respond to Susan's question about maintenance?
I wouldn't be able to speak for Galway, but I'm sure they're obviously aware of the effects of the dogs. Their thoughts were if they had a dedicated area, it would limit the maintenance to one area as opposed to many other areas on the project. I think that was kind of their thought process with that, but yes, I'm sure they're aware of the effects because they were dealing with it on the first phase. So they know what they're getting into with this proposition.
And then any other thoughts on the fencing material, since a few of us have raised the issue of a more decorative fence versus chain link?
I don't. I know we did price that out for them as well. We were just kind of bouncing ideas off of the owners, and this is the one they wanted to submit there. So.
Yeah, decorative is clearly more expensive.
Okay, thank you. Doreen?
I guess I'm wondering why. I'm thinking about the other property, and if I'm remembering it correctly, there's turf. They put in artificial turf, and that's supposed to be the dog area, but it's not fenced. They don't have a fenced-in dog area. Is that part of the reason for wanting to do something different? Are there problems that are happening at the other site?
I believe they're just, because it's not fenced in, if the dogs aren't going, they'll just simply walk past the fence and do their business elsewhere. So it's not really, the turf is being used some, I believe, but it's not the predominant focus in that area because it's easy enough for them to just walk elsewhere. So.
Yeah, because that was the idea, right? That there would be that artificial turf, and then there wouldn't be the problem with the killing of the grass in the other areas. But Rob, I was wondering, do you think there's going to be a problem? I don't remember what the plantings are here, but is there going to be a problem with the landscaping based on the? Oh, just disappeared. I think he hung up instead. When he comes back, maybe he can answer that. I was just wondering if having this many, I don't know how many people are going to have dogs, but it's a big apartment building. I bet there's going to be a lot of dogs and probably a lot of use. So I was just wondering about that. And then the fences on the other parts of the site, it's more of a vertical black fence. But I'm not really sure. There it is. Did you hang up on accident?
I don't know. I just lost connection, sorry.
Oh, no problem. I was asking you if you thought that the landscaping in this area would hold up to a significant amount of traffic. This is a big apartment building, and if even 50% of the people have dogs, it's going to be a lot of dogs and people running around in an off-leash dog area. I think he just broke again.
I think he's frozen.
He's just thinking really hard.
Yeah.
The dog.
Still actually a valid question for me. In fact, I was assuming that we get Bob back eventually. Tyler was going to, kind of as a follow-up or follow-on to that, even if the dogs in the current unit are not necessarily using the artificial turf, I'm wondering if, given the volume that Corey's suggesting might occur and the size of the area, it just, even as a fenced area, it would make more sense to do artificial. I mean, I just know as a former dog owner myself and a dog lover, it just seems like natural turf would be next to impossible, even with the best maintenance people, to keep looking decent with any kind of volume.
Especially if it's off, I don't have a dog, so I don't actually know, but I imagine if it's off leash and they're running around, is that causing more, tearing up the turf more than just
Right.
on a leash?
Right. Rob, I don't know if you heard the question, Corey's question, the second time around before you froze up again. Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
That may be Rob that just joined my phone.
Hello?
Yeah, okay.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Nice.
You gave up on your internet.
Alright.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's right. The question that's been raised, and with a follow-up to me from Corrine is, given the likely volume of dogs there, is it realistic to think that somebody could even maintain natural, a natural grass there? And in terms of overall plantings, do you think it's realistic to think that, again, in terms of volume, that's something that could be maintained?
I don't recall what the plantings are in that area, but if they're woody shrubs, I think they're going to do a lot better than perennials. And as far as the lawn and turf is concerned, if it's not irrigated, which I don't like to irrigate where you don't have to, but an intermittent irrigation would basically cleanse the grass and make it last a lot longer. But that's not the case here. So it's going to take a beating, especially in such a small area. So there will have to be a maintenance regimen to keep it looking pristine, which I don't think anybody expects it to be pristine if it's a dog urination area.
Would you advocate, Rob, for an artificial turf instead, or do you think that it's something realistically maintenance could do?
I can't advocate for that.
Right.
one way or another, because I'm frankly, I don't have a lot of experience with artificial turf in that capacity, so I'm just not, I just don't know.
I guess if it's gonna be a challenge to make it still look nice, then consideration for the fencing material would be important. Maybe something that's not so see-through.
Right. Hey, Corey.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't think this warrants a privacy fence necessarily. But I mean, having something more attractive could be a case to be made for that.
I would think just a decorative fence similar to, there's one there now, and I couldn't tell really what it was for. There was a lot of activity going on today, but not a privacy fence, but just a straight, simple vertical design decorative fence would look a lot nicer, and I guess I would prefer that. I know it does cost a little more, but it's not a huge area that you're talking about, so I think that'd be better. I think, and some owners, I mean, these dogs aren't going to be, it's not big enough to be it's not a dog play area really. So they're going to come out, do their business, run around, they'll come back in. I'm not so worried about that piece. People will still be walking their dogs elsewhere too. I don't know that everybody be always using it. But it certainly is convenient in the evening, that kind of thing, to have something like that. I think it's a nice amenity. So I guess I'm in favor, but I'm really leaning towards requiring a more decorative fence, personally.
Nancy?
Yeah.
I had a question and Rob, you might actually have some of the answer, and it had to do with that snow load and storage. And if it's being pushed up, how much distance would we want that back from the sidewalk? What's an adequate amount of space for that?
Well, I don't have the answer for that, but if I was building this fence, I would want to ensure that my brand new fence isn't going to get wrecked right away. I don't have a recommendation for what gauge fence or what type of fence off the top of my head, but I would think that it's going to be a real concern for them. And for us, I mean, we want it there to look good, and yeah, it's a concern.
Yeah, and I think if we push that fence back, it helps address the other issue of the vision triangle. And so I think we could add that in as a condition of approval for 5 feet back from the sidewalk. Seems like it would give adequate space. A few of us pointed out the ornamental iron fence on the sheet that was provided regarding the fence proposal.
Yeah, that's an example.
And I think a lot of us looked at that fence and we're like, hey, that's kind of what we're talking about, something that's vertical slots that still allows that space to be well-defined. And I think, speaking for myself, I would not be concerned of 4 feet or even slightly higher if the desire is we want residents to be able to access this space from inside, but we really aren't interested in having others climb over the fence for any good reason. But that type of fence, I think, would take care of the look as well as meet the needs.
I agree.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Patrick?
That's basically exactly what I was going to say. I was going to point out that vertical ornamental iron fence, and also I'm not really that concerned about the height. And I concur with Brian, really, that I think that's a better fit for that area. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Chris?
He's recused.
Abstaining.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, I'm dodging the screen here, so, anyway, I apologize. Would someone, any other comments, questions? Okay. With that, do we have a motion? Someone like to make a motion?
I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
I approve, or I recommend approval based on the staff recommendations with the additions of the finding of fact regarding the additional aspect of the location and visual aspect of that spot. Basically, it's a highly visible spot that we would want it to be set back from the property to address the vision triangle, as well as with increased, with using decorative iron fence, that the increased height seems appropriate. So somehow wordsmith that. With the additional conditions of approval of the setback from the sidewalk of an additional 5 feet, that a decoration or ornamental iron fence be utilized. The height of 4 feet is approved, and I will leave it at that one to start.
I would,
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second? Yep.
I have a question. Would it make sense for them to work with city staff to determine how far back the fence should go to avoid the vision triangle and allow for the snow? I mean, I don't know if 5 feet is the appropriate amount. Maybe it could be done with
4
3,
feet.
or maybe it needs 7, you know?
Yeah, I think one
I
piece.
would
Oh,
agree.
go ahead, Rob.
I'd like that addition. I don't know what the right amount is there. 5 might be more than we need. I'm sure about that. So I think that can be handled with city staff.
So I kind of agree with that. Could we amend the motion to, I mean, if you two are agreeable to have the setback determined by city staff?
Sure, as long as it's addressing both snow storage and vision
Right.
triangle.
Yeah.
Friendly.
Yep, friendly amendment.
All right, and then one other piece I wanted to ask a question about, and that had to do with not necessarily adding it here, but the consideration of if it's difficult for them to maintain the landscaping or natural turf in that area, that there be another reconsideration. I'm not sure if we want to add it in as a motion or as a condition of approval, or just to leave that up to the applicant. I'd like to hear a couple of people's thoughts before we vote.
I'm not sure what I think about artificial turf with dogs. I mean, I don't even know if that works for dogs. They're pretty
Yeah.
sensitive to what they, I don't know. I just don't have any experience with that, so I wouldn't want to make that recommendation particularly.
My dog would eat that turf, probably.
And so I don't know. And I know some people prefer not to have their dogs use artificial, so I don't know. But I don't know if a condition of approval that it be maintained. That's kind of, I mean, we kind of expect that generally. I don't know if we have to have that as a condition of approval. So I guess I'd prefer to leave that alone, I think.
And the reason I brought it up is there's a small area dog park down by John Nolan Drive that was like shut down for a period of time, and they redid the whole park and put in what I think is artificial turf.
really?
I've never been in there. I think it was because of the high volume use,
Yeah.
and because it's pretty long and narrow, I think it was taking a lot of abuse just by dogs running back and forth. And so they were probably struggling with maintenance. Given the size of this is why I first didn't add it. Like, I agree. I think this is a spot that you bring your dog to use the bathroom and then go back inside. You're not here
Right.
to
It's
run
not
your dog. So,
clear, yeah.
I have to say, I do think that is, some dog owners will probably use it as their main, I mean, it just happens. Some dog owners will use this as a dog park and as their main form of exercise. It will happen, especially given the volume that we know. I mean, if that be 5% of dog owners, we know a percentage of dog owners do that. It's still pretty high.
Yeah, I actually want to raise the maintenance point that was just raised by Brian as to whether that should be a condition, which is to say, is it, ipso facto that if it's not well maintained, developer would be asked to make other arrangements, or is that something that we feel like we want to add into the motion? That we expect the high degree of maintenance. It is obviously a very visible area.
And I think we're approving something that's a little unique here. This is a
Right.
large apartment complex that we're, in effect, like letting them kind of fence in and create a miniature dog park. I think it's a great idea, but I think this isn't something that we've done in other complexes, and that's why we're probably piecing this together.
I mean, it is a building amenity. That's,
And it could be something as like, the enclosed area continues to be well maintained, and if there are concerns, that they return to Plan Commission for further problem solving.
review and problem solving it.
I have a question for Tyler. I was going to ask when he would be planning on installing it.
The idea would be as soon as it's approved, we get it on order, and the materials are about 4 to 6 weeks out.
Okay. So you would install it in the winter versus wait for spring?
Yes, simply because our turnover date's going to be in December as well.
Okay.
So I think the owner just wants it to be up.
Understood.
So I'd like to consider an additional add of an item regarding that if the enclosed area of landscaping and/or turf is not able to be maintained, that the applicant return to the Plan Commission for further review and discussion.
I would accept that. Friendly amendment. Also, I'd like to discuss one more thing about that. I know we mentioned an ornamental iron fence, but I guess I'm not too concerned about that material as long as it looks like an ornamental iron fence. So can we kind of specify that they can have some flexibility and maybe add that in there as well, as long as it's that style?
Yeah. So, Doug, I wonder if it's a fence that's ornamental and aesthetically in alignment with the ornamental fence that was on the brochure, but it might be a different material.
Sure.
Right.
That works.
Okay.
All right, can you read it back to us?
My pen ran out.
That
so-
gibberish? See, Chris usually has his all laid out already.
Yeah, it's all laid out.
I know.
I was penciling it on the fly.
You did it then.
I've got the table.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that, though. I think we're on the same page, and there's some discretion to work with the applicant here at a staff level, but I think I have consensus from the commission. Thanks.
Could you read it back? Wasn't that a request for you to read it back?
You don't want to see what I have written. It's
You don't want to go for it, huh?
I have the highlights. The first condition is written by staff. The second being the 5-foot setback or a number determined by staff such that it meets both the snow removal, storage, and vision triangle requirements. The decorative ornamental iron fence or similar with some flexibility determined by staff. 4-foot height is appropriate. And then the landscaping clause that I need to go back and listen to. The pen ran out at that point, but basically that it be maintained to a high standard as the rest of the building would be kept to, and if that becomes an issue, it comes back to Plan Commission.
I think that's
it.
That's it.
And the material, some flexibility on the material.
Yep.
Did you get that? Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you all. With that, I have a motion and I have a second. And no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thank you all. Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
All right, thanks, guys.
With that, we'll move on to reports to staff and council members. Staff report regarding the status of the road and budget proposal.
Thank you. So for the economic development update, Elisa actually passed out a few paper handouts here, and I think was emailing them to the folks that were on Zoom. This had come up at the last meeting, a request for some demographic information, as well as a little bit more information about some of the new developments that have occurred in the last few years. So I will pass it over to Elisa to give a little bit more information, but I think if it hasn't already, it's coming by email. But this is just a draft at this point, but just wanted to look for some feedback, and I'll turn it over to her for a little bit more details.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Lisa, once again, we're hitting another part. What's in Florida?
Yeah, so this is something that Doug and I worked on over the past couple weeks, just trying to pull together some data that might be helpful since we've been...
Rob's in the waiting room.
Oh.
Thanks.
There we go. So I'm hoping it will be helpful to contextualize some of the discussions about housing and new developments that are coming through. This is a draft, so I'm interested to hear feedback if there are other things that you think, things that you might want to change, or other information that you might find helpful. Again, just trying to give some context for the discussions that we've been having. Most of this data much of it is from the American Community Survey, which is similar to the census, but they're estimates that happen every year. Obviously, with the 2020 census data coming in piece by piece, I'd like this to be a living document and be able to update the data as we have more current numbers, but this is sort of the most current information that I have. And then obviously the table on the back with the rental units that have been approved in the past 10 years, those were just pulled from Plan Commission, like zoning permits and Plan Commission minutes. But yeah, open to any feedback you guys have.
Feedback for Lisa?
I was just saying, it's great. I love it, like the infographic style. It's really helpful to digest it. It's definitely a thing to note that the rental units added since 2010 are all market rate. And as we think about how we can diversify our, housing stack, it looks like we have an opportunity there. Do you know if any incoming data will have any information on like car ownership, or does it get that detailed, or?
I don't know off the top of my
Okay.
head. I don't know if Doug has any
I think
more insight on that.
the ACS, the American Community Survey, may have commuting information.
Oh, okay.
So maybe, obviously, how you would get to work. It may not have sort of how many cars are owned at home, but you could probably deduce some of that, at least from that.
Yeah, I know several families that have sold their car. They've decreased the car during the pandemic, and I'm just curious. It would be interesting to see how that's changed. But thanks for putting it
Other
together.
comments, feedback? Excuse me, from Commissioner, yeah, Corinne.
This looks great. Thank you for pulling this together. I'll spend a little bit more time looking at it. But one question that came up, there have been a couple of things that I've listened to and read since our last meeting, and I'm just wondering if there is an increase in single-family home rentals instead of selling, if people are starting to rent those homes more frequently. And I don't know that that's something that the survey data that you're looking at has any information on, but I would be curious if instead of selling, if more individuals are choosing to rent their homes for that extra income.
Again, I'm not sure if that specifically is included in the American Community Survey. I'm not sure. There are a couple statistics that I remember reading through, tables that I remember reading through, that I think maybe got at like the number of units in a building and what are how many single family versus not, but I'm not sure that it gets at specifically like renting versus owning within single family. I could certainly take a look and see if that's available.
Okay.
Susan, I have another question. Well, it was brought up to me that the term market rate is used as sort of an all-encompassing rate, and I notice here you're distinguishing workforces separately, and market rate could be luxury apartments or it could be more workforce-oriented. So it's a little deceiving in some ways to just say market rate, I guess, when you look at it like that, because workforce could be market rate but more affordable than luxury apartments, for example. So I just think we should keep that in mind as well, because certainly not all of these are luxury apartments that are on here. So.
Can we just talk?
Other comments?
Yes, this is Chris. Sonia had put together a similar thing for us, I just have to guess, 5 years ago or more, and she had based it on the U.S. Census data. And at that time, we had, I think it was around 48% rental in Monona. So I'm wondering, I'm not familiar with the American Community Survey data, how that compares to the census data. Would there be a way to get something from the U.S. Census data too? Even if we started with the old one just to see where we're at, because I was a little surprised that we were at 46 or 7 or whatever, and now with putting in all those apartments, we're now down to 41. And that could be what someone else was talking about. Maybe a lot of these homes that used to be rented have turned over to ownership. I don't know.
Yeah, so the American Community Survey, it's certainly not as, you don't get quite as much like detail at the local level as you do with the census, which is why I do want to update this when we have more of the 2020 census data. I certainly can, I can pull the 2010 census data to show like a comparison where we were in 2010 versus what the 2019 ACS estimate is, and then eventually what like the 2020 census estimate, or what the 2020 census data is specifically. But yeah, it's all through the census office.
I'm not familiar with it, but when would we have data from the 2020 census?
That I don't know. I know there's some general things like population and.
Yeah, I know that it's sort of slowly trickling out at this point. Typically, I think in a normal decennial census, it would be coming out quicker than this, but I think they are slowly releasing the information rather than, it used to just be one data drop basically on the same day. And I can address the point a little bit more of the ACS versus census. So the census is obviously a full count of everybody and very accurate, but only every 10 years. ACS is sort of an extraction of a few data points that they sort of map across the city. So it is helpful in that it gives you more recent information, but it is there are some smaller inaccuracies that may come up given that it's not just a full count. So that's sort of the trick here, and it does give you the 2018 or 2019 information at a more local level, whereas you may at a larger metropolitan area be able to get more detailed information more regularly, but certainly for the scale of Monona, the ACS helps give us something that's maybe not just from 2010 or 2020 soon enough, but the value you can compare year over year, so maybe that could be something else to discuss, 2017, 2018, and then you're kind of comparing similar data points rather than just one versus maybe the 2010, which is where it does get a little bit, as you referenced, Chris, it gets a little wonky there. Yeah.
Thanks.
So I'm wondering, since Chris is referencing a document that Sonia put together, rather than having Lisa go back and dig through the 2010 census, and if maybe it's easy to find that document in our files, and then we would know what Sonia pulled out that we would be hoping to plug an update into as it comes in on 2020. Is just one option, and if we can't find it in our files, I don't know, something tells me Chris might even have it hanging out in his briefcase.
I don't remember, I don't know I have that. Do you remember it though, Brian?
Yeah,
I remember seeing that.
it might have been on the web too.
As a-
Yeah,
We can look around.
yeah.
She's not too far away, just email.
Yeah. Was
Yeah.
it, was it affiliated with the university year
39%.
or university project?
It might have been.
I think it was during that timing, so 2016-ish.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe that.
Okay, great. Any other comments about this document this evening?
Yeah, I had one other thing to mention, and, well, two actually. One had to do with the percentage of households owner-occupied versus renter-occupied. So we've had a variety of discussions at this table regarding that as it relates to zoning, as well as our comprehensive plan and other pieces, and the mixture, and really looking at what is it from a percentage standpoint you're looking at versus some of our units that are coming in that are, clearly rental units, and very different than the owner-occupied or renter-occupied as it relates to the single-family homes. And I think that was one of the key discussion pieces that we had. And we had a variety of residents that actually brought concerns to this group as well as council, where there are pockets that were single-family homes and then have turned over to owned out of state, sold without sight unseen, not ever seeing the property. And we've had residents then come forward and complain of it's a monthly turnover with little investment, little maintenance in those areas. And so we've had a lot of discussion here about what happens when you take, it's different when you have one single family home that might turn over if that person's moved on and now they want to rent it out as like a rental unit while they live somewhere else, versus the idea of multiple single-family homes being moved into a different concept. So that was just one thing to point out. And I think we were at like a 60-40 discussion. I can't remember exactly, but it might have been part of that comprehensive plan discussion. And one other piece to add in, and this isn't necessarily well known, and I think it was an important piece when we were discussing Fairway Glen. There were a couple pieces. One, we were putting residential in an area that was a commercial space on the drive. And we had a few discussions of like, wait a minute, are we going to turn the drive into, one residential space after another? And you can see the setback on that property is very different than many of the other setbacks of the other properties. So it was one of the first developments up there, and there were some key discussions around those pieces and a recognition of the proximity to the neighborhood directly behind that property and how it easily fits within that neighborhood. And the idea of like, if we were bringing residential or even new commercial to that space, to create much more of a walkable area, or that perception of bringing buildings closer to the drive. And then one last part about the Fairway Glen, it was one of the first properties that I was on plan or connected to. And it had a significant component around moving out, which was a disability focus. And so one of the key aspects of this development had to do with the inclusion aspect of ensuring that Moving Out Incorporated was also enmeshed in that, to allow this area to also be inclusive to our individuals in our community with disabilities that need support in their housing. So it's an important thing to note. And most of us don't know that that was a big piece of that development. So.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the difference between the rentals that we've created more recently and the notion that I think Corinne was getting at in terms of the number of rentals that are, by potentially absentee or mostly absentee landlords. I certainly remember Gail Ganser raising that around several properties in particular. So thank you for that. Anything else for discussion on this tonight?
I got one.
Corinne. Sorry, go Maureen, go ahead.
Okay, just to go a little bit off of what Ryan had just said, maybe one thing to add to the, maybe not to this, but somewhere would be to just note if there is something like a special aspect of the project. So, you know, the moving out component to Fairway Glen, I did not know about that. So, you know, something like that to add in. And then I'm sorry, I can't remember who made the point about market rate could be a wide range of things. So maybe just further refining what that might mean might be helpful, just as we're thinking about how diverse has the housing been that we've added in this time period in terms of accessibility.
Yeah. Patrick, were you attempting to say something?
Yeah, I was just looking at some of the other data and I had some questions. When I'm looking at the household size and like 39.2% in Monona is 1%. I mean, is one person? It seems a little, well, I'm curious about that. Is that, if that's accurate or not? So between a one-person household and a two-person household in Monona, that's like 76% of our housing units. Yeah, so.
Again, that's one of the statistics that comes from the American Community
Sure.
Survey, so there is a little more of like a margin for error there, and we'll have a better idea when eventually the 2020 census data comes out. So.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a great starting point for sure, but I was just curious.
Question?
Yeah.
Yahara Terrace is traced there, right?
Right?
It's got a lot more than 42 units.
Oh, yeah.
I was just trying to look that up because I thought the same
I
thing.
mean, it's a lot more than 42.
In fact, I wondered if it was swapped with
I may
Monona
have
Lake Edge.
Drop a
Mixed
one or
up some of
something.
the,
I don't know.
I think it's 112. I think it was like 96 or 112.
yeah, I can go back and double check those numbers.
Okay, Monona Lake
You
Edge,
know
that's
what? It's Monona Lake Edge.
yeah, that's the
Those
Burge
are-
project.
those are
Those are
swapped.
price switch.
Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
swapped, yeah. That's it.
Good catch.
Okay.
And the current one was only 96? Does that sound
That
right?
sounds about right. It's
Okay.
got a
Yeah,
lot
it does
more-
sound
Yeah,
right,
that is
yeah.
good. Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, definitely. The second one was definitely much larger.
Yeah. Any other comments at this point on this data? Perfect starting point again. Doug, I might suggest that we would like to ask members to give a little bit more of a gander on this, since we're just seeing it tonight, over the next few weeks, and then perhaps we can put this back on the agenda to revisit in a few weeks when we have a lighter meeting.
Absolutely.
If that exists.
It may not for a while, but certainly, and we may have the census data as well. But I think the graphics are great, and I just want to thank Elisa, who really took charge of this, and I think it's a really great template that we can refine. But I think it'll be a useful resource for a lot of stuff that I think both the city administrator and I see day to day as well. So
Thank you. Thank you for
thank
putting
you.
it together.
Thank you.
thanks.
Rob, is that a hand clapping or a hand raising? Okay, thank you. Economic development update.
So I'll jump through to the upcoming items, if I may. The November 8th meeting will have the North Point GDP, the General Development Plan, being considered, as well as both items for the 6501 Monona Drive project. So that'll be the CSM as well as the zoning permit, and that's the Chipotle project, as it's also known. And then we'll have the November 22nd meeting. There will be the One City School items. They're looking to come through with both the traffic items and some of the things that were conditioned in the zoning permit for November review, as well as the comprehensive sign plan for the project. And then we're also expecting the Springhaven project. Last I heard, November 22nd was going to be their next date for the pre-hearing. So Lots of things in the hopper, and certainly I would ask if any commission members know, certainly the November 22nd, if they are going to be traveling or anything, just for quorum purposes. It would be great to even just send me an email if you know you're going to be away, so I can be planning for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Doug. Any other updates or discussion on DEI efforts? Anyone on the commission or Doug?
Nothing from staff.
Okay.
I'll just note that the DEI committee did meet. I could not make it because I had a board meeting at the same time, but it was kind of a regroup, recap of what the work that had happened, and so just kind of a check-in. So I think it was just more of a kind of a compiling information and getting other thoughts and getting some people caught up if they'd missed meetings.
Okay. Great. Thank you. See here. Plan commission request for information? Anything?
I want to just add that, it is really important that in these next couple meetings, when Doug asks for people to RSVP, that we do that for him so he can track quorum. It makes it really hard if we don't have quorum, so, and it's really nice for him to be able to know and finalize those plans.
Unless we have any other requests, I will entertain a request to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I beat you to it. Move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Further persuasion.